Hey folks, we're coming to you live from Jim Shue's birthday bash and Legends of Drag Racing Extravaganza. And we've got some great guests here tonight, some featured guests, and some surprise guests popped up. And one of them, our first guest here, is Mr. Jim Hughes. And that's the name that, well, there's Jim Hughes in drag racing there the transmission place in Tucson. But this is Jim Hughes from Temple City, California, a special friend of mine who we go back, way back to high school days. And Jim was a hot rodder and really played a unique role in my life. I got my first ride in a hot rod and a street rod in Jim's Chrysler Powered 32 Deuce Coupe. And that was a thrill for me. Plus, even before that, his brother was in my class, and Jim went to Bakersfield. And Don would relay to me in our English class, we were supposed to do in English, but we were back there talking about Bakersfield. And man, I was all ears. Him telling me about the Mooneyham Coupe and the Speed Sport Roadster and all these cars that his big brother had seen at Famoso Raceway. And so Jim, just want to say hi. You're our first guest here, and it's great to have you. And you're still hot rodding it, right? You still got a couple of hot rods.
I was told years ago that the hot rod scene, the desire that you have in your blood for hot rods, expired. And I said, well, I don't know so sure. I'm not sure. This was way back when I was in my probably late teens, early 20s. I'll be 83 in June.
And it hasn't expired yet.
It hasn't. In fact, it's stronger than ever today, probably.
Right.
I still have a bunch of cars. I lived in Upland, California for 53, actually for 43 years. Married to my first wife for 54 years. She passed. And I sold 13 cars when I left. And I still have 4 cars. I have a 44 Deluxe Coupe with an old J2 motor in it, a LaSalle transmission.
Now that's a different one than you had, or is that the same?
No, it's a different car. You saw that car, Kenny.
Is that the one I rode in?
No, the one you rode in was a 32 Ford with a Chrysler Hemi.
And Randy, our production technician, scared the crap out of me. J2 O's, oh my goodness. You had to take off in second gear or just blow the tires off, and it was fast.
So Kenny sent me an email after that. I still have it, and it's quite graphically stated what he felt. But anyway, it's a pleasure to be up here. I haven't seen Kenny Youngblood personally, face to face, in 60 years. In 60 years. And I met him today here. I knew he was going to be here. It's amazing how he got up here. I was buying a spa, my wife and I. And I saw a picture on the wall. I told the salesman, that picture looks familiar to me. Looks like a Kenny Youngblood picture. He says, it sure is. And so I met with the owner, Paul, and then about a half hour later, Jim walks in, Jim Shue. And I told Jim my story. He invited me, so here I am. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, Jim Shue created, this show is brought to you by Creative Spa Designs, Jim Shue. If you're in the Vegas area and looking for a spa, be sure and look up with Jim. He's a racer. He's been in the spa business for, 25 years. You're going to get the best deal, the best product. So Jim, thank you so much. And the best part is Jim knows the Lord. Have that in common, and
Well, absolutely.
the biggest part of our life.
This was a divine appointment to come up here. I really
Yes,
believe
it was.
It really was. God will work in you if you allow Him to do that. If you don't allow Him to do that, then you can go on your own. Or is likely
We have free choice.
It's a choice. God given us all a free will. Do what you want in your life. It's a choice.
Yes, it is, and we all hope you make that choice. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're going to see who else we can find here, but wanted you to be the first. I'm so glad to see you. We're going to have to sit down and tell some stories, favorites, Randy, and Thank you. And he got you here, and he's always thrilled.
Here with him all week.
Yeah, it's wild. So let's turn back the clock.
All right.
Let's go
Yeah,
back.
thank you.
And how'd you get into drag racing, and especially in the funny cars?
Well, we started off with
poster now. It's on.
started off with
Just hold it right up.
street racing. Still not on? It's on.
It's on. Hold it closer.
A lot of street racing, and
This.
when I figured out it was time to quit getting tickets all the time and go out to the track. You know, then I found out how fast I needed to be.
And how old were
And
you?
it was a lot faster than I was going.
Yeah.
So I knew I needed to do some work.
Yeah. And of course, you drove for Fiberglass Transmar of Eldridge for years. And I think, was that the first topless Corvette Roadster? I'm sure the Beach City was after you guys.
It was one of the early ones for sure, but it was a record holder, and I really didn't have much competition. So we put that same engine in Anglia and ran a gas supercharged, but it just wasn't quite big enough engine to keep up with the pressure. So
Okay.
we got beat the first round in Bakersfield, and we said, we got to make some changes. Then
Okay.
after that, I got into the Firebird with Steve Montrelli.
Right?
Yeah, the new breed.
And then that was on fuel. You didn't run on fuel motor in Anglia.
No.
Right.
Alcohol a couple times, but just
Yeah. Poster now. There you go. So we can-
Anyway, then the Corvair that Mark built, the first Corvair body, and that was small block Chevy. In fact, Bones built that, and it was only a 327. Never did run quite well enough to keep up with the big boys, but I think then after that one, we built the Javelin, and I was the driver for the Javelin.
Right.
So,
Now, we know that you did have one airy crash.
yes, sir, it was.
Which car was that? Or was your
That was the Mr. T Corvette,
Yeah.
Vic Morse.
Right.
And it was kind of a funny story because we went out to Orange County because I hadn't driven it before. Went to Orange County to do a test drive, and they had the ambulance and everything out there, and then it started raining. So we didn't even get it fired up. So then we went to Lyons, and we talked to Larry Sutton, and Larry said, well, okay, make 1/2 pass, and if it seems all right, then make a 3/4 pass. And if that seems all right, then you can come back and see if you can qualify. So we made the 1/2 pass, and that was fine. And we made the 3/4. Kind of wandered a little bit, but it was fine. And then on the full pass, I don't know what happened. Just about right in the lights, the engine boomed. And I think it knocked me unconscious. I don't know what happened to the car, but it took a sharp left and went to the guardrail and just disintegrated.
Yeah, it did. I know that starter Larry Sutton said it was one of the worst crashes that he'd seen, and he said it was very frightening because he jumped on a scooter and went down there to the end, and he said when he got down there was parts and pieces scattered every place, but he couldn't see anything big enough to have a driver in it, scared to death. And he said finally he'd look, and he couldn't find it, couldn't find you, and he heard some moaning and groaning. And he said just on the other side of the guardrail was enough of the roll cage wadding up with you in there. And you had some injuries, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, it could have been. The biggest problem was that I was left-handed and it crushed my left arm. And I still don't have a radial nerve, but I didn't think I could qualify for a driver's license again, so kind of ended my career at that point. But I broke both legs and nose and a few ribs and crushed my left arm.
Wow.
The worst part was I was left-handed.
Yeah. And so that did injure your driving career?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't want it to, but that's the way it worked out.
We're just glad it didn't end your life. You're still here. And here was
Still
a
here. Yep.
Oh, great. Well, good talking with you, Rusty.
You're the man, Kenny.
Thank you, sir. Enjoy the party, and we'll get out and take a look at that in a little bit. Thanks, Rusty. Justin. Are we rolling? Rolling, Randy?
We're rolling.
Okay. Jim Shue's favorite funny car driver. Jim used to, of course, race the Hellfire. He was driver Johnny Wright, but He's always talks about Randy Walls. He says, man, when he tells the story, he says, the first time I saw Randy Walls, we were down by the finish line. He come through there, and the car was sideways with the tires smoke.
The tires were on fire, in fact.
Yeah, there you go. That was good. So, Randy Walls, it's great to have you here at Jim Shue's birthday bash, drag racing extravaganza.
I'm really pleased to be included in the whole thing. It's just blows me away what my life has been. So.
Yeah.
Another stage.
Yeah. And you came in from
Kentucky.
Right. And you have quite a little compound there, I understand, and you do something very special.
Well, I try to keep up the racing, go to a lot of car shows and stuff like that. Yeah, I own 440 acres, and I'm making a healthy herd of deer there.
Yeah, he's kind of a animal rescue and a habitat preserve there on his property.
Yeah, when I bought this 175 acres, it had hardly any deer on it. They were all so skinny and unhealthy and stuff. So that was my project. That was only a year and a half ago, so we're really pleased with the results.
So if we digress back to
racing,
when did you get go drag racing, Randy?
I was one of the original funny car drivers. What I did is I saw these guys converting their super stock cars to AFXs by moving rear end forward and putting nitro in them and stuff like that. Man, I gotta have one of those.
Yeah.
And so basically I bought an old junk car like most people did and converted it into what they call a funny car. At that time it was a funny car. And I don't know how any of us ever survived that era.
Yeah, they were not quite as safe as that.
Yeah.
Was that injected that first time?
No, it was blown and fuel injected on fuel.
Wow.
I didn't run much percentage in it, but it would have twisted the car in half if I'd put much nitro in it.
Right. Speaking of twisting in half, because younger fans wouldn't know unless you were back there in the day, that the cars had full suspension coilovers on four corners with automatic transmissions.
Yep.
A blown fuel engine.
Yeah, luckily we only had probably 1,200 horsepower.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that saved any of us, I'm sure.
But they were awesome to watch. They rocked like an animal, and really cool to see.
Yeah, it's the days I wish were here again, actually. I like the camaraderie and all that between the people, and not just a big money race.
That's the best part. You said that you hadn't been there, but the place to go is Steve Gibbs' Nitro Revivals. That's really... you can't walk 5 feet in the crowd without seeing somebody you can't see.
I know a bunch of people that were there and came back.
To Steve's deal. And then you ran the Nova, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I wound up with Hayden Prophet's old Corvair, and that's the one that I was driving in Paisano and ran into me. Luckily, it didn't kill me, but almost killed me. At 200 miles an hour.
What was that?
That was at Irwindale, and at the finish line. And Art Carr was a good friend of mine, and him and his kids were standing there and saw it, and they all screamed, and he said, don't worry, he didn't feel a thing. And so then he walked over, he couldn't believe I was getting out of the car.
Is there one race or achievement with the funny car that stands out in your mind above the others?
Not really. I had some really good experiences and stuff. I loved all of it. Even if I got beat, I still loved it. And if someone beat me this week, they better be ready the next week, though. I did a lot of, when I was back here racing, I netted $50,000 profit in 1969 racing. And that was strictly from winning. And I'd book in real cheap, but I'd get extra money if I set a track record, or if I won the match, or what have you. And so that's the way I did it. And really did good. I run the same motor almost all year.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, was that a Chevy motor?
Yes, that was a big block Chevy motor.
Yeah. And so those were steel blocks.
Right. Cast iron blocks.
And you did better than most with Chevys.
Well, I never broke a block. I had a couple of crankshafts that cracked and just threw them away, but I never had one break. And I never broke a rod or anything like that.
There were quite a few Shue power cars.
And to start out with, yes. It was right in the infancy of a big block, and you couldn't even buy good rocker arms for them at that time. I mean, I'd buy a set of aftermarket rocker arms, and I'd be lucky if it all lasted a run or two.
And you still, you're near Bowling Green? You still
Yes.
take the car out?
Yeah, I still have my 1970 car, and I have a remake of my 69 car. And the 70 car, the actual Randy Wall's car of 1970, is in the Kentucky Motorsports Hall of Fame Museum. And I have the yellow one. I take it to a hot rod reunion in Bowling Green. In fact, I was the Grand Marshal in 2019 at that meet, and along with Maskin, who has already passed away, and a few others, but John Smith. And that was quite an ordeal too. I can't believe any of this kind of stuff. And most people don't realize too that I'm the only American to race in New Zealand since 1977. The LA Hooker was over there. That was the last one, and I was there the end of 2012 to 2013 for a month. We really had a blast.
That's great. Well, we'll have to give Steve Condon a call here after.
Sounds good.
Steve kicking. That's great. And I think you're going to take one more ride here. I think you're going to be in the Hellfire tonight.
That's what I heard.
So hang on, folks.
Okay, we'll all hang on.
Yeah. Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
Okay, we have our next interviewee here, celebrity guest Jim Jet Nielsen. And Jimmy, we go back a long ways.
Yes.
And
Many years.
Tell us about the Night Witch. How'd you get into funny car
The
racing?
Night Witch. Raymond Beadle from the Blue Max funny car fame. He came over to Hawaii in 1979 and chartered my boat. And I caught him a marlin. And he did what he said. He said, I'm going to send you some shirts and everything. And I thought, yeah, right. And he did. He said, if you're ever in the States, come see me. So I was coming over to California to do a Jordache jeans commercial before I went from the Jordache look to the Lardache look. And we went to, sorry about that. I knew that was coming. But so anyhow, he chartered the boat and I got him a marlin and he said, if you're ever in the States, come there. So I went with him and a football player, Pastorini. Yes, so I went to Orange County, and I'd never seen the Jets run before. And I said, wow, I didn't know about it. I'm in Hawaii. So I see the Jets, and I said, I want to do this. And they all said, yeah, have another cocktail. And I said, no, I want to do this. So I went home, sold my boats, and dove in. I licensed in Orange County at night. I'd never been in any kind of race car. Jumped into a funny car.
Fuel funny car.
Yeah, and I ran, my first race was the North Star Nationals in Brainerd, Minnesota. But I licensed, and that was when they were at Upland. And I went there, got my license. I said, sir, when's the next national event? They said, next week. And I said, book me in it, I'm on my way. That drove, me and Timmy Marshall drove, and I got runner-up my first race. There we go. Sutton, Larry Sutton signed my license, and Lipke and Harrison sold signed my license.
Right. That's how I got into it. So, but you weren't in the fuel funny car too long before you switched over to the jet.
Well, I wanted to do jets first, and I did that while they were building their jet car, and then they never did, and so I built the jet one.
And this was a Mercedes-Benz.
Yes.
Body jet limo. And were you living in Vegas?
I was living at that time in Vegas, and the track sponsored me, the Las Vegas International Race with the old one. He's still my sponsor 33 years later. Tom Floyd.
That's great. And you hold a distinction in that, I don't know if Randy Connell, our producer, Randy Connell.
Randy Scandalous.
Do you remember when they built the 215 loop around Las Vegas?
The Beltway.
The Beltway, and when they had the grand opening ribbon cutting ceremony, Jim ran the Mercedes jet limo down the freeway.
I burnt the ribbon instead of cutting it.
Yeah, made probably a 300-mile-an-hour pass.
Well, what I did actually, in 1997, I did the DI opening, the Desert and Arterial, And I told him I was going to do it. I get there and the whole thing is on a curve. Jet cars don't go on a curve, but so I opened my mouth and had to do it. So we went around the corner, down the hill, and underneath the Las Vegas Strip at 266 miles an hour in 5 seconds. And that was, now that I'm older and I got more brains and less of everything else, but I did that record. And then I did 2 other ones, Kenny. I did the opening to Windmill. I ran 380 through the tunnel there. And then 1999, I ran 391 on the I-215 going to Decatur.
I'd say you probably spent more time on it.
Still holds the world record. What do you know? It's got 400 on the freeway. So we're going to have that for a while.
That's great. That's great. And you currently go around the country with the land speed car you display. And
Yes, I got it in Texas right now. I bought a boat and I have it with my boat, and I'm going to be doing some things this year later. I'm doing some things, and I'll keep you posted on that, Kenny.
you never know.
You never know.
What the jet's going to come up with.
That's what my mom used to say.
Well, great, Jim. Thanks for catching by.
Kenny, it's always been a pleasure, and I hope we have another 40 years together. Thank you very much.
Hello. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, very special guest that came up from Long Beach this weekend, Mr. Rick Lorenzen, who, if you're aware of the Lions Automobile Foundation, or Lions Museum in Long Beach, California, it's the Chiefs. He's the boss. It was his inspiration, and it's a fantastic place. We're so glad to have you here. And so you were a fan down there in Long Beach Grand Strip back in the day.
I was a spectator. I was there all the time. Grew up there. And still living the experience.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, if you have the chance, if you're a motorhead and you're anywhere near Southern California, be sure to go by the Lions Museum and car collection. I've been to a lot of museums and collections and never see anything like what Rick has created down there. And still creating. We've got many projects in the works.
We got about 4 or 5.
4 or 5 at the time. We've got a fab shop.
I have to know if he created the lightning strikes.
Well,
Created there.
we put together a really great team of folks. And when I first went down there and saw what you wanted to do, I kind of had a picture in my head, and we came up with a drawing. It always amazed me, and it came out pretty close to how we sketched it out.
Realistic.
Yeah, and I think we're all on the same page and have the same vision. And also, if you're into Willys, Rick is probably the biggest collection of really nice customized Willys in the world. 50 Willys. Various sizes. Fantastic collection. So it's really impossible to describe. You got to see it to believe it. And I think they're expanding their hours. You can contact them online at the Lions Automobile Foundation. And it's so great to have you here. We're going to fire up this Hellfire Fun Car in a few minutes and help them with the tune-up over there.
Good to be here. Talk with you and everybody here. A lot of great people here.
I hope you have a good time.
Races. People I grew up with.
Yeah, that's your running
It's fantastic.
Oh, that's great.
Living my youth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're still looking good. Okay, folks, well, we're going to fire up the Hellfire here in a few minutes, Rick. So thank you for being here. And keep us posted on there's all kind of events and stuff going on at the museum. Rick Lorenzen, ladies and gentlemen, and if you live in Las Vegas and you're into cars, you know Randy. He covers all the car events. He's a great website. He's known as Lug Nut here in Las Vegas. And one of the first guys that we met when we moved over here full time was in the Huskers Car Club. And we got him here at Jim Shue's place. What do you think, Randy?
Totally impressed. This is built for parties. Boy, what a bunch of wonderful people. These old-time race cars. Great people.
Yeah, it's amazing thing that Jim does here. He's the president of Creative Spa Designs, and he wants to spend his kids' inheritance, and he's doing a pretty good job here. We'll take a walk around the party area, but he's got several famous drivers here: Randy Walls, Rusty Dellings. We talked to them, Jim Jet Nielsen. We're getting ready to fire up the funny car over here with the Dynamic Wonder. Doug Davenport's going to spin that baby over for us. And I think Randy Walls will be at the controls. But it's anyway. Randy is helping us film this deal. Always good to see Randy. We know that you will get the word out there.
Boy, we'll post this tomorrow.
There you go. So if you go to lugnut.com, vegaslugnut.com, you can
Click on the YouTube logo.
Great. Okay. Well, good. I see our friend KJ is here. Let me see if I can get her over. And motorsports fanatic. KJ just loves racing. She got her checkered flag ring. She's into NASCAR. She hangs out with Richard Petty and all the stars over there. She goes out to drag races.